This is Critical Nonsense, our high-lowbrow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Aaron, Joey, and I talk about the state of competition and life's greatest lessons.
Woo!
Na 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 na. Getting Joey with it. This is what a Joey sounds like.
Angry. Oh, that's good.
I'm
that's
so
good.
angry. That's good.
Oh, yeah. No,
That's me. That's like
you.
My personality. I'm so angry. That's good.
Well, in response, I say, "Quit playing games with Aaron." This is what an Aaron sounds like. that's what we got.
And this is what an executive producer and number one hit on TRL, Jess Vander, sounds like.
Hi, this is Jess.
Hi, this is Carson Daly. I don't think we have any housekeeping.
Nope.
Rate, review, subscribe.
Okay.
Check us out on the YouTubes,
Sure.
as the kids do.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the kids. That's where the kids go to listen to us.
Nope.
We're showing up in YouTube Kids.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Get a tankless water heater. Look into double pane glass. Be concerned about whether the inspector is going to see what's going on in your basement. That's about it.
Yeah, that's the housekeeping. That's the housekeeping we need to get to.
Yes.
Well, or Aaron, don't get a tankless water heater. Get a high efficiency water heater that's grid connected so it can take advantage of surpluses in renewable energy and save you money and make the grid more resilient.
Yo, put in like a what is it? A water reclamation system, a gray water reclamation system, and you're being good. You're being good to Mother Earth.
Just move into an Earthship. It's that easy, everyone. Jeez, what are you doing?
Joey's
Anyways,
here.
the house is clean.
The house is clean. That's my fault.
Topics.
Mm-hmm.
What do I have for y'all this week?
Curious,
the Olympics
Joey, what you got?
happened.
No,
The Olympics
really?
happened.
Huh.
They came, they went.
Wait, they're over already?
Yes.
Yeah.
They are gone. Obviously, this year is fraught for the Olympics because we are still in a pandemic. If you're saying post-pandemic, you shouldn't say that because we are very much still in a in a pandemic. Yeah.
The during times. Yes.
But the idea of the Olympics, I think, felt different this time around than it has in the past. And that could be for any number of reasons. The fact that we are in a pandemic, the fact that, all of these conversations about this being the lowest rated Olympics from TV ratings and stuff in a long time could be about cable cutting and Peacock not having all of its ducks in a row, all of its hatchling peacocks in a row.
Yeah, you got me. That was good.
And so theoretically, maybe it is sort of like some technical structural thing for why people weren't watching or were watching in different ways. Who knows? But what has made me think a lot about is competition and sort of the role and orientation of competition in society. I think, at least from my vantage point, America has always been a very competitive culture. People have been very into sports, to the Olympics. We are a capitalist, wet dream. Can I say that on the air?
I'm so angry, and I'm still angry.
Yeah.
Blame Keynes, not me.
Those nerdy like that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Little economics nerdery for you.
Keynes? I didn't know.
Yeah. But I think this idea of competition feels like, at least again to me from my vantage point, that it may be culturally waning a bit. And maybe that is sort of a growing disillusionment with historical concepts that we are reevaluating, like American exceptionalism and ideas like that. Or maybe it is sort of a reduction in like the hyper masculine orientation to society writ large. I'm not sure, but it feels like competition within sort of like broader social interests is waning. And so I'm curious to hear y'all's perspective on what you think the state of competition is in our culture today.
Not that this is a corrections department, but just for everyone's benefit, a baby pea fowl, be it a peacock or a peahen, is a pea chick.
Oh my goodness.
There we go. Get your pea chicks in a row, NBC.
I love this. Doom, doom, doom. I think...
Great, we're going to have to bleep that out.
Yeah. Don't let the legal team hear it. I do think that there is a big competition question versus a smaller competition question. I think the big competition is still alive. like the idea that like somebody somewhere thinks they're better than someone else and therefore needs to take theirs. So I think that's still alive and well. But I think what you're talking about, and totally redirect me if I'm taking us afoul.
Cool.
Got one in there. Is more so sport-like things. So the Olympics, the NBAs, I will throw RuPaul's Drag Race in there. And like that sort of competition that's more that's at a different scale, and it's not like, winner takes all. And I wonder if, bringing up RuPaul's Drag Race, I think that over the past many years we've had a very different relationship with competition. I feel as though people have become much more obsessed with rules, how the rules actually are designed, who is playing the written game versus the unwritten game, or like the game beyond the game. Like, if you're an NBA player, is it about what you're doing on the court, or is it about how many like multi-million-dollar endorsement deals you can get while you're active? Like, they're just other games afoot. And now everybody who's a spectator is involved with that same level of psychology. Like, no one sitting on the sideline anymore can just enjoy their like peanuts and Cracker Jacks and worry about stats. It's more so that you have the opportunity to engage with the totality of sport, the individuals that are on the field, the reason that those individuals are on the field, like everything going around it. And I think that right now people are tired of reality. People are exhausted with reality. And I don't think that sports in this moment are as escapist as we would like them to be. And I think that we generally thrive, and sports tend to thrive, when they're either a place for us to sort of refract or isolate real things into a very tidy environment. Like when you had, like, I don't know, Jesse Owens in the 1938 games in Berlin or something like that. There's something really tidy about literally having Hitler in the stands, but this is the Olympics, so you just do this, you play the games on the ground, and it's different from everything else that's happening geopolitically. Or on the flip side, it's like completely, fantasy, like American Gladiators or something like that, where it's like, it's competition, but what are they doing? Or Wipeout. I really want to be on Wipeout. That's just a side note.
I really want to be on Wipeout. Same.
So I would posit that competition right now is on hold because we need a hold from the world, and sports is not a safe place to retreat from it right now.
Yeah, I think, small aside as well, Aaron, the show we don't want to be on is the Slip and Slide show, because they got Me Too'd, but in this case, the Me Too was everyone had diarrhea.
I was about to say, I don't think they got Me Too'd. I think they got Number Two'd. It's slightly different, but I was right there. There.
The show got canceled, but yeah.
different.
No, I think you're right there. Like the two buckets are sort of like sports as escape or sports as allegory, right? Kind of. Does that like,
yeah.
Because we love us a good sports allegory, right? Like,
yes,
this person is fighting against like the powers that be for like effect. And it's like, well, actually, like they're playing basketball, but okay, like we'll like steal a story and then have it mean something entirely different, where the person's like, I was just going to play basketball, but like, no, you're fighting for X, Y, or Z thing. But there is that like, one of the things I keep coming back to is the sort of tribalism of sports, I think traditionally, or competition traditionally, and like where the Olympics, I think, there's this sort of like two things happening at the same time that you would think would theoretically come together in a very specific way and aren't, right? There's sort of globally a rise in nationalism, which you think would sort of, and in the US, there's a rise in nationalism. And you would think that that sort of concept would then go hand in hand when you're having like a sort of, in quotes, fight amongst nations for like supremacy of the fastest runner or the fastest swimmer or the fastest shooter or whatever, and yet those things seem like they're not coming together, as best I can tell. And so like one thing I've been wondering about, like in my own case, is like I don't live in the place where the tribalism around like the teams that I have followed my whole life exists anymore. I follow like New England sports teams, and I'm not around anyone who is like gung-ho about New England sports or anything like that. So I'm not seated in that tribalism. And so everything sort of like diffuses out a little bit, and you're not like, you don't have these locations where it's sort of like natural to be seeing other people consuming those same things, and we're not convening around the sports anymore. And so I don't know if like the tribalism weighs in or not.
Okay, I don't know if I know exactly how to explain this, but I have a hypothesis, and I think it's related to the like why the allegory isn't working maybe not isn't working, but like could be breaking in some instances, and it's confusing people. And I feel like it has to do with competition being in some spaces definitionally about a kind of like absolute superiority, or like a designation of like, you are just like the best at blank. And what challenges that is an awareness of the context around a thing that we are getting way more comfortable with, craving, fluent in. Certainly it's new, I think, but in like the cultural use of context, like that person's good, but only because they had these resources, or like because they were doping, or like they had like a ton of training from they're born with certain physical, whatever, like whatever you want to say, and that's in the sports world. But I even am thinking about The Infatuation as a food review site, and I don't know if we mentioned this on the show or if I talked about it with somebody in passing, but in the last couple of years, I think they have shifted away from an absolute scale of superior restaurant ratings. So it used to be that every restaurant that they reviewed on this site was placed on a scale of like 1 to 10. 10 being the best possible restaurant. And I don't think anything got a 10, even in the time they were using the scale. And they, leadership shared an announcement that was saying, look, we actually can't use this scale because the context around what makes something the best restaurant just is so dependent that we can't assert that something's like the best restaurant across all restaurants. It just doesn't make sense. It's the best for something, or here is an instance that may make sense, but basically all of this is to say, I think generally we're grappling with this context, which just makes it really hard to compete on the same scale for anything.
Yeah. And I think that same point, right, of like the context that we're contending, I hadn't thought about this until you were saying it, but the types of things that a lot of people, and particularly young people, are interested in right now, in some ways, a lot of these sports and competitions that we're talking about become allegories in the wrong ways, right? Like even within an NBA team, which is obviously like the most, extreme, even like the worst player in the NBA is still very, very good at basketball, it's like 450 spots out of like people around the globe. There are people coming from everywhere to play in it. But you still have the haves and the have-nots, right? The people that are getting like supermax deals and the people who are on like veteran minimums or like barely, like a 10-day contract and things like that. And it becomes really stark when you're seeing like a third of this team's salary is going to one person and everyone else is like getting that money spread out across the team for different reasons. And like other people are like, how do you measure intangibles? This person is a glue guy and keeps the chemistry on the team really high and brings people together and makes it like a good place to work and all of those things. And it's like, well, yeah, but he's getting paid, $5 million a year while like the star on the team is getting $43 million a year or something. And so like all of a sudden it becomes an allegory for like income inequality in America, which is like a important issue that like we're contending with now, or is like very present in sort of discourse. And so all of a sudden it becomes an allegory for the wrong reasons.
There's I think where I sloppily and will continue to sloppily like play around a little bit, which is that I feel as though 30 to 40 years ago, and probably more recent than that, the general public could enjoy some of the most popular sporting events that are out there for the sporting event itself. Like, you are there to watch this team beat this team or play this team in this sport. And when I compare that, when I compare the sort of celebrities or idols, the athlete idols that came out from that era to the athlete idols of today, the ones of today are so much more contextualized. Like, you are thinking about who they are, where they came from, why they're on the court, why the team is structured the way it is, that this person in team sports is getting paid so much more than the rest of the team. There's just all these other things that inform the sport that now seem to take over for and be more important than just physical prowess. And I think I'm thinking Simone Biles, I'm thinking Naomi Osaka, I'm thinking of Serena Williams, I'm thinking about people who are absolutely at the top of their games from a sport perspective, but the reason that they're discussed as idols is for much bigger reasons than that. And if I compare those sorts of conversations with like Charles Barkley or even Michael Jordan, like, their conversations were just about sport. We don't just talk about LeBron and sports. We can't just talk about LeBron and sports because we have to talk about Space Jam. That was a mistake. Why did they do that? They besmirched a legacy on that one.
Well, I'm not going to go there, but I think you bring up a good point on that, Aaron, too, because it's not even just the contents. The context is unavoidable, but it also has a few different sides. Like, there's definitely the upside of wanting to know more and be interested and delve deeper and fall into the rabbit holes that now we can all follow with the internets.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, for instance, what happened with Sha'carri Richardson, who ended up getting cut after winning the Olympic trials for a track and field event, that, now people can still follow her as an athlete and support her in her athletic journey, despite not being able to compete in the Olympics, I mean, it's sort of a positive out of a bunch of, negative things one after another. So the competition morphs into this other like beautiful contextual story. I don't know. There just feels like there's more to this than just a lot of baggage that means we can't compete with each other.
Yes, like the competition between teams is something that that's been the model for sport and for discussing sport for so long. And now it's the battle of the athlete against insert. And it's like, because we have to fight against our own demons. We have to fight against all the things that keep us from getting to the court. Like the narrative has become it's almost coincidental that although the world has become more tribal, our discussion of athletes and athletics seems to becoming even more increasingly individual. This could also be, remember, I mean, we all know I am not Mr. Sport Watchy person over here.
Sport
And
ball.
I think I like all the sport ball, and that's about it. And I also think that most of the sports that I most often follow of any kind are more individual sports. And it's more individual athletes than it is the actual sport itself. So I'm curious, Joey, from like someone who actually watches sports, is that true? Is any of this true?
Well, I mean, a lot of what y'all said feels true. It's like, I mean, there's a lot of, y'all are just throwing out a lot of truths, and it's hard to like even like be like, yeah, yes. But like, I think the human interest component of it is one thing I've been wondering about too, right? And I'm wondering if there's sort of like a loss of institutional trust in a lot of these things that we've been talking about, right? Whether it's the league, whether it's the, Olympic Federation or FIFA or whatever, there's so much loss of trust in those systems that then the sort of merit of the end state feels tarnished. Like a lot of times what people that are like very into sports will talk about is like an asterisk win, right? So like,
yeah,
the one whoever the woman was that won in the event that Sha'carri Richardson wasn't in will have an asterisk next to her gold medal because but all signs were pointing to the fact that like Sha'carri Richardson would have won, but then was not even able to compete.
Yeah. And
so is that like a real victory, right? And she wasn't able to compete because she smoked weed, right? Like that's not like a performance enhancing thing. That's like a weird systemic like issue and all of like the baggage that comes with like the history of the war on drugs and everything else stopping her from competing. And so all of a sudden if you don't trust the institution and you feel like the institutions are making poor decisions, then the merits of the victories within those constructs are sort of tarnished or like blurred and it becomes fucked up. I'm thinking about like things that both of y'all said. There was this essay, and we may have talked about it before. I think the essay is just called Merit in one of Chuck Klosterman's books, But What If We're Wrong? And the idea is basically like awards are changing, and like the way that he always argues things is just like he's like pulling things apart. He's like not saying which way is right or wrong. He's just like, if you look at it this way, this is like all deconstructed and whatever. And a lot of what he was talking about is like you look at like book awards and things like that, and it would be like straight white men giving other straight white men literary awards for like their attempts at like writing the great American novel or whatever. And he's like, you see identity politics coming into those awards because the construct has been so broken historically that you need to fix them. And so you bring identity politics in to balance them out. And then the question becomes like, what merits do the awards have if identity politics come in to correct them, but they were broken originally, and then you start to just like sort of deconstruct like what like the best according to whom and when and why, and like you won this year, but like there are 2 better books than the year you won the year prior, and those 2 didn't. Like, what is the field of competition? And all of a sudden, like the awards and victories and wins and things like that just sort of like quickly sort of decline in value the more that you add context. And so to like the point you were bringing up earlier, Jess, like maybe this is just we are increasingly drawing context into more discussions. And as soon as you bring in context into discussions, like anything gets knocked off a pedestal, right? Like nothing really belongs on a pedestal because everything is flawed, every person, every institution, whatever. But historically, we would hold things like the whole idea of American exceptionalism was just like America is good at everything and needs to be good at everything and is sort of like inherently good, which is obviously a flawed concept in and of itself. And when you start to say like this system can be flawed, this institution, this competition, this game, like whatever. I mean, what was interesting about the whole like Tour de France scandal was like, everyone was doing the drugs. So in some ways it was like, okay, because like everyone was participating. Right. So like the system had sort of like self-regulated in that like, if you wanted to win the Tour de France, you had to be doping. And like, is that better? I don't know. Like it's like part of the game. If everyone's playing, like, I don't know.
It reminds me so much. Even you explicitly mentioned awards. We've had conversations about award shows and why they're having a hard time right now too. It's the same thing of measuring up people and comparing them and their work and their excellence is very difficult when you just start paying attention to how not apples to apples any kind of comparison is, no matter how much you try to even the scales or, you know, set sort of a similar starting point to actually do that and balance where anything is being measured or where it's coming from is impossible.
It's like everybody that wins has an asterisk victory today.
Oh no.
But the only, and it's, I guess this is where we kind of went even with our award conversation, but it's sort of like when I look at my Wrapped playlist from Spotify at the end of the year, it's my own award ceremony to myself almost, where it's like, Tori Amos, you again for the 10th year in a row are the most listened to artist by me. Good job, Tori. Beyonce, you'll get it one of these years. Like that silliness, I think, orients it back to my individual experience as opposed to anything that I would care about in the competition space. And I don't know if that's good or bad or if that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Jess, do you have a way to wrap up this corner with exceptionalism?
I guess I'll give you credit. I hadn't thought about it before this conversation, but there does seem to be like there's a thing happening with our feelings about competition, our interest in competition and what it's even for, entertained by this idea that maybe it's because we just don't really know how to have a fair competition because we know too much. But does that mean
or is there even such a thing?
Right. But like, maybe that's fine. And as a personally competitive person, I'm now grappling with what this means. You know, do I need to upend some of my own personal models of what is important and where competition isn't even helpful, or where it doesn't need to be overthought so much to be fun and be fantasy instead of having to always be this allegory? But I like that we're unpacking something. Thanks for bringing this to us, Joey.
Pow pow, I win.
Yep. Yep.
As you know, I love making lists, and just this past weekend,
I do know that.
Among my family, we were talking about, conversation came up about something, things you really need to know how to do. And I was like, oh, I have a list for that. of course. And I call it my life lessons list. And it's a list of all the things that you may not formally learn, but do at some point need to learn in your life. And it's got a ton of different sections, like the financial section, how to do your taxes, how to invest, insurance, like what is that? You got to know that. Professional, that's like, do you know basic stuff like how to read, how to present, but also how to get a job, how to interview, stuff like that. Then there's like house stuff. Like personal hygiene maybe is not part of your house, but it's part of your body, and that's the home of your body. Laundry, cooking, getting stains out of stuff, or like even to the point of finding a place. And when you get there, can you like change an electrical socket? We've also got the social section. Like, do you know how to host a party? Do you know how to be a guest at a party? Do you know how to give somebody a gift and or tipping, which is like somewhat related, but not related to, I just like the social contract of things. And this list goes on and on and on, but suffice it to say, I was surprised at how easily new things, as I mentioned this to the group, came up in conversation, like, oh, this thing. And so, of course, I just wanted to pick your brain. What are some life lessons that everybody needs to know, according to you?
Oh, man. This is a good question and tough on the spot. I think there, like in the way that there's sort of like laws of physics, yeah. I think like the laws of reality and the laws of friendship are not aligned. It's like quantum physics and like relativistic physics.
What?
Or like whatever.
In layperson's terms, what do you say?
Main physics are like the rules that you would apply to relationships at work are not the rules that you would apply to friendships. And so like an example is like the truth is always right, but the truth is not always good in friendships, right? Like the idea of like you telling a friend a hard truth when they don't need to hear it is like not a good thing. Like it's like a lesson. It's like a lesson you have to learn the hard way, or maybe you don't. Maybe you're just like a gifted
white
socializer or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that even that idea, right, of like white lies are like serve a function.
Right. Telling a white lie is that kind of does feel like a life lesson.
Yeah. Like being able to tell a white lie in a situation where it's like the person doesn't want to hear the real truth. Like it's not going to help you. It's not going to help them.
Yeah.
So like don't like carry on out of principle. I think a lot of my rules probably just sit in the gray zone of like nothing is black and white.
Well, that's okay. It's not a rule. It's a lesson, right? Like, do you know, knowing how to do it or when to do it does not mean that it should always be applied for everything, which is, I think, the non-physics way to describe what you're mentioning, right? Just because you've learned this lesson does not mean you apply it all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think about like what are lessons I've learned. Do you feel like lessons in these situations are always coming out of like personal failure?
No.
And in which case that's when you get the lesson, or you feel like there are instances where you didn't fail because someone told you how to do something and you avoided failure? Because I don't know if I've done that.
For sure. Like, I think there are a few different kinds. There's another kind, especially in the financial category, where I actively sought out advice. Like I sat my dad down once at dinner and was like, Dad, tell me everything you know about credit cards. And it's okay if you don't know a lot, but like I know nothing. So it will be better. It'll be better than absolutely nothing. And I plan to do, additional research or, doing your own homework on the internet. I feel like that counts. You don't have to necessarily learn the hard way to learn a life lesson. Or it's the kind of thing that as much as you try to study up on, that you won't fully get it until it happens to you, like, processing mourning and grieving a death, like that's a life lesson, but no matter how much you prepare, you may not be able to handle it very well until it's happening to you. So I don't think it has to always be like, you made a dumb mistake and now it's happening and, oh, well, like, whoopsie, let's not do it again. I think there's so many different ways life lessons can present themselves or get taught.
Yeah. I feel I'm like struggling with that point because I feel like all of the lessons I know are because I've because you messed something up.
Well, that's okay. Like, let's add to the list then.
So like, never take a job based exclusively on money. I've screwed that one up. Where you're taking the job because it pays more, but then not factoring like all the other things that go into like spending, 8 hours a day with a bunch of people or in an environment or in a role or any of those things. Like, that is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Homework is overrated, except for in math.
And then the more you do, the better you'll be at math.
Yeah. That's been my experience. Homework is overrated except for in math. There's probably an audiobook for that is now one of my life lessons because, but it basically applies to find a way that works better for you because so it's like a placeholder concept for a lot of things where like I learn better from audiobooks than I do from like reading it myself.
Yeah.
Or at least from like a time and efficiency perspective. And so like wish I'd known or thought of that in college and would have bought audiobooks instead of not reading like any book that was like extended or long and just crossing my fingers hoping for the best. It worked out all right, but I still would have liked the knowledge. So what other ones do you have?
One thing that I like that is a total left turn from what you were describing are dress codes and like what are the ranges of a dress code when something says casual, for instance, at this most recent wedding that I attended, a family member that I cannot name because that would be embarrassing, was wearing like not quite cargo shorts, but like close, in khaki shorts and sort of a athletic looking polo. It was like the dress code was casual, and I was like, no, is it casual? Rehearsal dinner is actually sneakily kind of just a cocktail attire. But how one learns that, I don't really know, except maybe by practice, where you show up to an event and you're like, oh, I'm deeply underdressed. Good to know. I did not get this right. And then you do better next time. Or business casual. Like, that's not casual. I basically just what you learn with dress codes is that casual is not as casual as you think it is. Yeah.
I have a life lesson related to clothing is N+1 underwear.
Oh, smart.
If you're going on a trip,
yeah.
If you're going on a trip that is under a week, it is N+1 underwear. Just bring one extra pair of underwear than the days that you're traveling, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. That's like the business travel rule that I've kept to. And if it's 2 weeks, then it's N+2.
Yeah. Oh, you want to hear another thing? Okay, now that we're on a clothing roll, something that my mom taught me because she knows how to clean anything is the way to get out armpit stains from a white t-shirt. The trick is soak it in hydrogen peroxide and then put a couple drops of Dawn. And then once you have this sort of soapy, moistened fabric, you do what I've only ever heard described as to, which is like the Chinese way to describe when you rub the fabric with itself. So you like take it in your hands and you're like sort of creating suds with it, and it works like a dream. It's really amazing.
I wish I had more life lessons. I'm trying to think. A lot of my life lessons are sort of like that I've got from other people, or like from my dad, like around like construction sites and things like that. Of like,
wear a helmet.
If you fuck it up, you're going to have to do it twice. So like go slower, do it right the first time type of things. But
Measure
they're
twice,
like,
cut once kind of thing.
yeah, but it was never presented like even me saying it the way I said it is like a cleaning up of the language. You know what I mean? But like a lot of those things I think are sort of like beaten into my head. But it was always presented in ways like my dad is like a nice, gentle, kind man, but it would always be like, don't be a fucking idiot. Like, like that was the way like the lessons are presented.
Never forget, my friends won't ever let me live this down, but in college, speaking of math, I was stuck on a problem set, couldn't figure it out. My brother majored in stats and economics, like math related things. I reach out to him. I'm like, Ben, I don't know how, like, help me with this math thing. I don't know what I'm doing. And I swear his response was, Jess, just do what it says. Just do what it says. And like, that's the answer. If you just like do what it says, then you'll be fine. I was like, this is the worst advice. But also, I guess so, because otherwise, was I just really asking him for him to do it for me? Probably. Instead, he just wanted me to do it.
One is like the power of a well-written email was like a lesson that
how to write a good email. That is not easy.
Not even about how, because it's just like being slow and deliberate and like the things that can be unlocked from a simple, like well-written email to a person. And their whole thing, the person who was sharing this, I think it was a guy named Todd Lamb, who's like sort of like artist, creative type of dude, done some like really weird, fun things. But he was just like a lot of the things that have happened in my life were just from like writing a really good email. Wow. And then after he did that talk, I asked him to participate in the creative project we did in grad school. And I basically cornered him. I was like, you said if you write a good email, it can unlock a lot of doors. You kind of have to follow through on this thing.
It's like, I wrote this awesome email, so are you going to do this thing for me now?
Yeah. And he did, to his credit. So it all worked out.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well negotiated, I would say, or cornered, or however you want to call it.
Yeah. Be generous with your time. Mm-hmm. I learned as a lesson. I think you just, be good to people who are asking for time if they're not, like as soon as someone is being like greedy or unkind or unappreciative or anything like that, like pull it back. But, when you were in a similar position, like early in your life or whenever, like people need help. And so be generous with your time.
This, Joey, I come in being like, how do you do laundry? And you're like, but what if we take this life lessons exercise and turn it into one of beautiful fables and the morals of those stories and have it just be like a beautiful, like personal sort of account of all of these memorable moments in your life? Because
I'm probably really bad at all of the other things you were talking
You're like,
about.
I don't know how to do this thing. Yeah. How do you sew a button?
Yeah. It's like, I can do it. I'm not going to do it right, but you'll have a button on there. It might look janky.
If I may, I just hope that all of you who are listening, who find this interesting, ask this question of your immediate family or friends or whoever you think could teach you something. And I'm so interested to hear if you can pass anything along to us, because we have to expand this list. Really, the ultimate goal is to expand the list and its completeness so that then all life lessons may be tracked.
Sounds wonderful. Share us your life lessons, please. There's a few cringe stories that were shared with us last week. We are not sharing those, but if you have life lessons that you would like shared, we will share those.
Yeah. And if you're like, this is a good lesson, but don't share it, then you can say so too. But also, I want to know. And we want to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah, cool. we need to learn. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
brought to you by those little crumbles of AstroTurf that got kicked up behind you because Sha'carri Richardson is much, much faster than you.
We'd like to thank our executive producer and debate champion, Jess Vander.
Thanks, Beck.
Sound engineer and torchbearer, Alex Contel. Appreciate you, man.
And we have to thank Les Jacobs for all of the coordinating of programs and programming coordinating.
Indeed. And you know what? I consider them 2 of my 5 favorite Olympic rings. The production crew of Sarah Gilbert and Nora Mesterich. Thank you both. Very, very much.
And as always, thanks a lot, and here's your gold medal.
Bing!
Special thanks to Sha'carri Richardson, it sounds like.
Oh my gosh. Did you see her trial race? I was there in person in Oregon. She's running by. She points at the clock like, I know what I am doing. It was the most amazing. It was the most amazing.
To roll with that, special thanks to Tom Daly and Maddie Lee, the Team GB synchro diving team that won their gold medals. So cool. You just, if you don't follow a lot of sports, follow Tom Daly on Instagram. It never will let you down.
Wow.
Never will let you down.
Thanks to I have no one to thank at the Olympics. This is a state. I have nothing to say about the Olympics.
Johnny Weir, you can thank Adam Rippon, you can thank all the chickpeas, pea chicks that helped bring the Olympics to you regularly.
Yeah, thanks to the guy in points karate that kicked the other dude in the head and knocked him out and didn't win the gold medal for that reason. Like,
wow.
I guess that's not really thanks. It just feels like isn't that a win? I don't know. Right. I'm not a points karate guy, so I don't really have commentary.
Mm-hmm. Special thanks to parents and guardians who teach us the life lessons that we would never otherwise earn. And to those, without those specific individuals, also any kinds of friends or mentors who are willing to do the same.
Specifically Pee Wee Herman. Thank you, Pee Wee Herman. Taught me a lot.
Taught me everything I know.
Everything.
If anyone wants to be my mentor, we're taking sign-ups. You can contact me at joeyneedsamentor.com, and you can start teaching me some lessons. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
What's the first lesson you would like to learn?
How to not break things. How to not say things.
Yeah.
How to stop moving. Things like that.
Yeah. If you are skilled in not breaking things, not saying things, and also not moving, you should, again, reach out to joeyneedsamentor.com.
Yep. Submit your application now.
That's right.
I always put a little jingle on it. It was a good thing.
Yeah. Thanks for that jingle.
Welcome. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Please don't.
Okay. You can pick your friends and you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose.
Like
all right, ready? Go, Jess.